News now.
Working on the next steps for peace in the Middle East. I'm Sue Guzman, Fox News. President Trump is now back.
Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It's 5:07 on this 14th day of October. Thanks for tuning in to O'Connor and Company. We've got a big morning here as we reflect on the aftermath of the post-peace era in Israel. President Trump flew back midnight Israel time, just in time to get here to award Charlie Kirk the Presidential Medal of Freedom posthumously. That ceremony will be later today. There's a lot of reflection, a lot of opinions on President Trump's trip to the Middle East, and it's a moment like this that really sort of clarifies things about who people are and where they stand in our country and around the world. We're going to reflect on all of that stuff this morning. Plus, at 7:05, Matt Schlapp of CPAC will join us. 7:35 brings us Congressman Andy Harris, update on the government shutdown. 8:05, Alex Pleitsis from the Atlantic Council on the hostage peace deal. And then at 8:35, she's running for governor of Virginia. She's Winsome Earl Sears. That's a loaded program already. And then add to it, we've got a special guest co-host this morning, the one and only Sean Kennedy.
Well,
friend of the program. Guest. Good morning, Sean.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to our exciting lineup today.
Well, it's always a great conversation with you, Sean, when you join us as in your position as head of Virginians for Safe Communities. But you've also, you wear plenty of hats, and you've got your finger on the pulse of some of the issues that are most important to people who live in the D.C., Virginia, Maryland area. I refuse to say DMV. But also a lot of issues that are sort of rising to the top of the agenda in the next couple of weeks here, the sprint to the finish line in the Virginia governor's race. So we thought it would be a good time to have you on and sort of dive into all of that stuff.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. I hope I don't hit the bottom.
No, I don't. We won't let you. But talk us through. So tell us a little bit about yourself, because we know you well as a frequent guest, Virginians for Safe Communities, talking about issues, Steve Descano, and all the problems with law and order. So I'm guessing you have a legal background.
I'm not. I think I'm not a lawyer. Trademark is the most important thing on my resume. Going to law school was something I avoided. I actually am a boarded academic. I'm pro PhD lives, but I'm not for myself. And I decided I didn't want to be poor and live in Dubuque, Iowa. So I went into policy, and I took my master's in history and at overseas, and then I came back here and applied that in the political realm. So I've worked on the Hill. I've worked in major mainstream outlets, members of the media mafia, and been in policy in various roles for the last 20 years or so here in the Washington, D.C. area.
So you're one of those unicorn policy types who actually can communicate and get to the point. I appreciate that very much. Thank you. Because, sometimes you get a really good policy person on, and 10 minutes later you have no idea what they said.
Well, it's because I don't know very much, so I just sort of filibuster and get through it.
Well done. So you're also with the Law Enforcement Legal Defense Fund. You spend a lot of time advocating for cops at a time when cops are under fire.
Yeah, it's the important thing, and it's sort of happenstance. I've always been involved in criminal justice issues and legal policy in various forms, but I actually joined the Law Enforcement Legal Defense Fund a few months before the Floyd incident, and then it sort of exploded, where everyone is now eyes on what's happening with the police, and we were under siege where everything about cops was bad, and there was very few voices out there saying anything positive about law enforcement. So we just sort of wanted to drop truth bombs all over the place in terms of what was actually happening. And, some of our research was unearthing what African-American communities actually thought. There was polling out there and other things like that showed things that went against the media narrative. And we unearthed that and sort of, put that to the fore. And so we write op-eds, we make media appearances, and we do, research reports advocating for law enforcement, as CNN would say, facts first, making the case.
As CNN would say, but not as CNN would practice. Sadly.
Yes, it's a dangerous web we weave when CNN says facts first and then puts people on air that are truth challenged.
Yeah. Well, and some of the things that you really dove deep into the Richard Cox story, which is it still amazes me that there's people who, they don't publicly defend the guy necessarily, but they certainly don't prosecute him, especially people like Steve Descano and prosecutors where he's facing charges for the exact same crime in Arlington County. But over in Fairfax County, Steve Descano still refuses to see any criminal activity because Richard Cox claims that he's a woman.
There's something else going on here under the surface, and we still haven't really got to the bottom of it. But between the police chief and the county supervisors and obviously Descano himself, I'm convinced, and this is maybe my most charitable interpretation, that Nick Minnock over at WJLA has so thoroughly embarrassed them that they are double, tripling, quadrupling down as if there's some justification for their inaction. Because there's no other way they can justify the fact that they've done nothing else but to continue to dissemble and hope that what happens in Arlington resolves the issue. But in fairness to Fairfax County Police, they did investigate a 30-year-old sexual assault against an underage girl, and they are prosecuting him for that. He was actually booked into jail a week and a half ago and then sent back to Arlington, but for first-degree rape in Fairfax County. So they're going after him on a different charge, but what he's done in the last decade, yes, there's been no charges, and it's really unconscionable.
Wait, so are you telling me that Nick Minnock is sort of the George Costanza effect here in Fairfax County? Like if Nick Minnock appears to be advocating in one direction, Descano's office says, we got to be on the other side of that issue.
I've talked to Nick at length, and I guess they're so close to just hanging up the phone when he says, "This is Nick Minnock," and then.
But you know what's funny about Nick is, and he's a frequent guest on the program. Friend, I couldn't tell you with certainty what his politics are. I just think he's a good newsman. He knows where there's a good story, and he can tell when a politician is being a weasel, and so he keeps pressing them. It just happens to be in this town. It's only in one direction, really, because all of the dominant politicians are Democrats, and Nick recognizes that they need to be held accountable too. He's the only reporter around here that I think does, other than people on this program.
Well, I think Nick is one of the best out there, but I will say this, having worked with the media, obviously on lots of these stories and things like that in Fairfax County and Northern Virginia on prosecutor and law enforcement issues, is I think the right gets something wrong on the media. The media is not biased, though they have biases in the sense that they are totally against us and reject out of hand conservative point of view. They are myopic. They don't know a Catholic priest. They don't know anyone who really owns guns or goes hunting. They're like zoo animals to them. So you have to sort of break them out of their shell, because all the people they encounter don't look like or talk like the average conservative, so they have no sympathy or understanding of you. Again, you're some type of thing to be gawked at, an art exhibit or something. So that biases. And then on the other thing is, people in the media are so lazy. Part of that's their overwork, depending on what it is. But a good story will get play if presented correctly. And sometimes I think
you got to do their work for them.
Yeah, I'm not. Yes, basically yes. If you do their work for, and I try to do that. If I do that and I put it up there as a silver platter and I bring it to them, sometimes they still don't bite. But I'd say, I won't name names, but there are people who are on the left, I think, personally in their biases, but they love a good story. They do have to get through other gatekeepers, news directors and things like that. But if you can really navigate that, you can get through to some people who are not on your side, because their ego sometimes comes before their politics.
Well, I'll tell you, I think in many respects you are right about that most of the time in this town. There are some who call themselves journalists who are absolutely, totally in the tank, biased advocates. We talked a lot about George Stephanopoulos yesterday. He's one of them. Christiane Amanpour is another one, and we'll talk to her latest atrocity a little later in the program. But more with Sean Kennedy here and our favorite Fairfax County attorney, Commonwealth's attorney, Steve Descano, and a thing he said recently, just a couple days ago, about the police unions. We'll get to that in just a moment.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Your next $1,000 could be one text away. It's $5K a day on WMAL.
It's hard enough to be a cop in Fairfax County. Lord knows they do their job. They've got, rules of engagement that put woke political agendas first when it comes to common sense criminal justice reform, or whatever has been inundated on the police every day as they try to do their job and keep us safe. And then when they actually do make an arrest, go through the process and get the guy over to the prosecutor's office, you've got Fairfax County Commonwealth's attorney Steve Descano, who basically finds any excuse to let people out, cashless bail, lower the charges, and then the criminal's back on the streets again. It's not good. And Sean Kennedy from Virginians for Safe Communities has been chronicling this on our behalf as a frequent guest of the show and friend of the program. And then you try to make some reforms. You try to help out. You try to get the cops an upper hand out there, Sean Kennedy. And then here comes Steve Descano taking to social media saying, and I just want to get this right, there's no greater institutional obstacle to real reform than police unions. If you spend your career working for that obstacle, you don't believe in reform. So he's throwing the cops and their representation under the bus, saying that they're the problem for reform. Something tells me, Sean, that you may have a strong opinion about this.
Hi, Steve. Are we kidding? This is the funniest part is that Steve Descano is the biggest obstacle to reform if you believe in reform, because he mangles it so badly. I mean, over in Arlington County, I say Parissa Dagani Tofty is dangerous because she's good at what she does. She's pushing a very strident agenda, and she's very good at it. And she does it relatively under the radar and effectively. And Steve Descano is in the news all the time because he's so bad at what he does. I was talking to a reporter at a major mainstream outlet here in the region, and he said, Steve Descano is his own worst enemy, mostly because he's an idiot. This is a reporter who covers him, and he called him an idiot. When he says things like this, one, he didn't even write that statement because there's too many 3-syllable words in it. So, I mean, I sort of feel bad that, he had to agree to it, but he couldn't even read it. So, it's one of those things they had to read it out loud to him and then overpronounce the syllables. I mean, Steve Descano is not the brightest bulb. And so him throwing shade, in this case, on the local police unions, the lady doth protest too much. The biggest obstacle to any kind of reform or effective criminal justice in Fairfax County is him. And it's just a shame that he's still in office. And because the Democrats overwhelmingly control Fairfax County, I mean, Spanberger is going to get 75, 80% of the vote.
Yeah.
I mean, Steve Descano will win until his last dying breath if things don't change.
That's one of the interesting dynamics of the, we talk about these Soros-funded prosecutors from L.A. County to Manhattan and Philadelphia. Every major city has these prosecutors who win the elections. And what it really is Soros has identified these areas where Democrats dominate. All you have to do is get the Democrat nomination, and they're smart enough to know, these Soros-funded organizations, that all you need to do is have a D after the name, and it doesn't matter how bad you are. It doesn't matter for the most case. In San Francisco County, ironically, they actually threw out he was so bad, they threw out their Soros-funded prosecutor pretty early on. But in L.A. County, the dude survived the recall effort. Descano has survived through it all because it really has to do with the voters being so sort of so partisan and not really paying attention. If I really believe that if Fairfax voters saw without any party affiliation what Steve Descano stood for, who he was, they would never vote for him.
No,
but
I mean,
Soros's people are smart enough to get that nomination, and that's all the work they have to do.
And if you don't know, this is sort of inside baseball, but in the primary last time when Descano was up, and this goes to your point, Larry, is Descano, once you tested, even on a neutral messaging, you asked questions about what he's doing and about his opponent, and you gave them, both sidesism. Steve Descano either lost or it was both sides were basically a plurality split at 40%. Mm-hmm. Why Steve Descano won was because he shifted message entirely to abortion. Abortion.
Which the Commonwealth's attorney has absolutely nothing to do with.
It was ludicrous, but that's what happened in Fairfax County, and sometimes these partisan issues win out over common sense. So
well, it's true. And by the way, that is the Democrat strategy across the board, and we're seeing it play out right now in Virginia as the entire ticket Commonwealth wide, from Spanberger to Jay Jones, they're all using that strategy in the last closing weeks here. It's all about abortion. That tells you something. All right, Sean Kennedy's with us all morning long. Coming up, we've got something to say about Christiane Amanpour. Wait till you hear the atrocious thing she said about the freed Israeli hostages. That's next. It's 5:24. Well, Christiane Amanpour has always been an American-hating hack over there at CNN. Before that, I think she was at ABC News. She's got an accent, so everyone in D.C. loves her, especially the liberal elite. But what she said yesterday about the Israeli hostages after they've been freed, it might actually finally be the career ender. We'll play it for you and her pathetic apology next.
WMAL FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station. Making sense of the news. News Talk 105.9. News now. Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
We're off and rolling here at 5:37, and if you utilize the Beltway up at the top of the loop, especially the inner loop there, you're going to have a rough morning already with road closures on the inner loop in and around Montgomery County. And it's going to get bad. Outer Loop's feeling it, too. We got Jamie all morning long to let you know what's going on. Also at 7:05, Matt Schlapp from CPAC. Talk about the peace deal. 7:35, Congressman Andy Harris on the government shutdown. 8:05, Alex Pleatzis. He used to work with hostage negotiation policy at the White House, and he's going to join us to talk about the peace deal. And at 8:35, Winsome Earl Series, the Lieutenant Governor of Virginia. It's Larry O'Connor with Sean Kennedy all morning long here. Sean, thanks for strapping in and getting ready for us.
Well, I'm glad to be here, and I'm here bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, as always.
I said that, the reaction to the Trump administration's engineering of this hostage release and the peace deal in the Middle East that has been celebrated there on both sides of the equation in the Middle East, not just in Israel, but then afterwards he went to Egypt and Trump was celebrated. He got the Order of the Nile, I think, which last time, I think it was Pharaoh Ramses that gave it to Moses when he, came back from his exile. I'm not sure. I could be wrong about that historic fact. The point is, everyone internationally seems to be celebrating this thing. Here at home, though, the reaction is quite revealing, whether you're a never-Trumper or whether you're a Democrat who just has to oppose everything Trump does, or if you're an objective journalist. During the analysis of this event yesterday on CNN, Christiane Amanpour, the elite of the elites of international foreign affairs journalists, she revealed who she was during her commentary. Take a listen to cut 5 here, if you could.
And I think for sure people who start to talk to the hostages who've only just been released will find that it will take a long, long time for them to recover physically but also mentally. It's been a terrible, terrible 2 years for them because not only are they there, they're probably being treated better than the average Gazan because they are the pawns and the chips that Hamas had.
I'm sorry, did you catch the very end there? Let's listen to it one more time, just the last part.
They're probably being treated better than the average Gazan.
Sean, once you think they can't go too far, they go even further and cross the line. This is absolutely despicable.
200 innocent, totally innocent people. These weren't even Israeli soldiers. These were innocent, mostly young people and older people who lived in a kibbutz and young people at a music festival were abducted at gunpoint after being often brutally assaulted, and then only 10% of them are coming home. I mean, maybe a little more if you include those who've been released before, but 2/3 are not coming home. What do you mean they're treated better than the average Gazan? They were murdered. Most of them are dead.
And those that survived were starved and humiliated and beaten, and the women, we can't even get into the atrocities that they had to face.
The false equivalence is jarring, and it's so strange, but maybe revealing and not unexpected that people who fled, I'd say, authoritarian countries like the Shah's Iran, like Christian Amanpour's family, who then landed elite educations in a first world country like Britain and then make huge careers here in America, are apologists for the people who would oppress them and certainly oppress people who don't look like them or talk like them or believe like them and murder them, murder innocent children and hurt women. And the idea that she's an apologist for this is really just abhorrent.
It's beyond atrocious. Absolutely. You know, we hear a lot in the left-wing social circles and policy circles about white privilege. Let me tell you something. The fact that Christiane Amanpour has been able to keep her job and stay employed over the decades, where she's been a disaster. Remember, for a while there, they replaced David Brinkley with her to head up the This Week show on ABC News, and that was so bad they had to shove her to the side and bring in George Stephanopoulos, who already hosts Good Morning America every day of the week. CNN keeps retreading her, bringing her up. It is the epitome of white, liberal, left-wing privilege that she still has a platform and is able to spout off like this. And anyone else would lose their job after saying something like this on the air. She was pressured by CNN to come back and apologize, and she did, by the way, and they gave her a minute to do it. Take a listen to her pathetic apology.
Now, earlier live on air, I spoke about what a day of real joy this is for Israeli families whose loved ones are finally being returned from 2 years of horrific Hamas captivity, and for civilians in Gaza who finally had a reprieve from 2 years of brutal and deadly war. I noted that for the hostages who are finally home, it'll take a long time for them to recover mentally and physically. But I regret also saying that they might have been treated better than many Gazans because Hamas used these hostages as pawns and bargaining chips. But that was insensitive and it was wrong. From speaking to many former hostages and their families, like everyone, I've been horrified at what Hamas has subjected them to over 2 long years.
That's it. I mean, I guess she did use the word regret in there, which sort of suggests an apology, but she never said she was sorry. She just said she was wrong. And
she's sorry if you were offended. She's sorry. She's deeply apologized that your feelings were hurt. Her words weren't hurtful, but she's sorry you took it the wrong way.
That's pretty much what I'm getting from it. If you're not smart enough to really understand my larger, more intellectual point, that's on you. She's an absolute monster, always has been. And the fact that she has some influence and weight within the intellectual circles of the liberal politics in this country and the media members who still revere her is really says something about them.
Larry,
not about us.
I think you're understating the fact that a British accent adds 20% to your IQ. Every time you're just smarter than the rest of us, you have a British accent.
There is something to that, actually. It's 5:43.
Mark Levin, weekdays 6 till 9 on 105.9 WMAL, making sense of the news.
Sean Kennedy, I know you have a busy day. You wear lots of hats. You do lots of work. Do you ever watch The View? You can't miss it, right?
I haven't caught The View in years.
I do like the way you said it. It's like getting a disease.
Well, I almost thought The View was canceled for a long time. I thought it was like it went off the air with Oprah.
No, they're still plugging along. And, of course, they always have the one sort of token so-called conservative seat. For many years, it was championed by Meghan McCain, who, you know, no matter how you feel about Meghan McCain, she did a damn good job of articulating conservative ideas, even some that she didn't 100% agree with, just to sort of be another voice at the table. Alyssa, Farah, can't say the same for her. Earlier in the year, in January, when they were talking about, was this January? Yeah, it was right after New Year. So it was before Trump was even sworn in. But Trump had said that he was going to make it a priority to get the hostages freed in Israel and in Gaza. Take a listen. This is cut 7. This is what she said back then.
Changing a tune, it's not making every single thing a 5-alarm fire.
Yeah.
If he does good, if he gets the Israeli hostages out, I promise I will wear a MAGA hat for one day on the show and say, thank you for doing it.
Yeah.
She'll knock it right off my head. But like you have to be able to cheer for wins when they happen and then call out relentlessly the wrongdoing.
Well,
yeah, I agree. I said earlier, Sean, that all the reaction here at home about this peace deal is really revealing about who people really are. Let's not forget, Alyssa Farah Griffin, she worked for the Trump administration, like right up until January 6th, basically. She was more than happy to cash those checks and get the prestige of being part of the Trump administration until she licked her finger, put it up in the wind, and saw that they were blowing in a different direction so she could boost her media profile, which she did, by suddenly becoming anti-Trump. The fact that her wearing a MAGA hat on the show would be a punishment in some way or a sacrifice is kind of laughable. But do you think she's going to do it? Do you think that she'll actually make good on her vow?
I certainly hope so. If I'm one of the producers, that's a great TV moment. I used to work in television news. That is a moment that would go viral and get people to watch The View, at least watch the clip. So if I'm the producer, if I'm back to my point earlier, which is ego and publicity, that would be the moment you want on the TV, just because then like Joy Behar is like freaking out and like trying to steal the hat from her and running around like Duck, Duck, Goose or something. It'd be great.
That's running around the table like a children's game. That would be, but isn't it saying something that having someone on the panel of a news program on ABC News be openly supportive of the president and his agenda, a man who got the majority of the popular vote and did a clean sweep of the Electoral College of the states that were up for grabs, that having someone openly show their support for him and his policies would be a big TV moment? That should be the norm. That half of the voices on that table should represent half of the country instead of one person who really basically spends her time dumping on the president and claiming she's a real Republican.
I mean, sometimes you watch these shows and you feel like the executive producers and the news directors are like creating a Harlem Globetrotters versus Washington Generals moment every time they put a conservative on there. So you got to feel bad / good for the CNN folks who pick Scott Jennings, and they're like, I thought you were just going to be a lapdog, and criticize your own party. What happened here?
That's right. That's right. Aren't you friends with Mitch McConnell? What are you doing being nice to Trump? Yes.
Yeah. I mean, you and I
right.
could write like almost like AI, what David Brooks's old columns or Ross Douthat, who I think are great guys, but like you could predict what they're going to say, and they want to be able to go to the nice Manhattan or Georgetown party and be like, he's one of the good conservatives.
That's right.
And so she has to play, nice, because when she goes backstage, she wants to be invited to their parties or whatnot. And anyone who wouldn't do that or wouldn't play ball will be exiled.
Well, let's just remind everyone again, cut 7A. This was Alyssa Farah just about 10 months ago about Trump and the hostage deal. Listen.
I promise I will wear a MAGA hat for one day on the show and say, thank you for doing it.
All right. So we'll see. We'll all be tuning in. No, we won't. We'll look for the clips on
Larry,
social
you need to
media
buy
after.
a box of MAGA hats and every day mail one to the ABC studios. Just every day. Alyssa.
Not worth the investment. 5:53.